She trembled, not from fear but anticipation. His whisper calmed her. "Breathe with me. We have all night." For years, her life had been filled with noise. Phones ringing, people talking over each other, deadlines chasing deadlines. Silence made her uneasy because silence gave her space to think, and thinking often led her back to memories she tried hard to avoid. That night, however, the quiet felt different. It was not heavy or awkward. It felt gentle, like a pause the world had been waiting to give her. She sat there, hands resting loosely, feeling a strange tremble move through her body. It surprised her. She searched inside herself for fear, but it wasn't there. What she felt was anticipation, soft, steady, and unfamiliar. It wasn't the kind that made her restless or impatient. It was the kind that made her breathe slower, as if time itself had decided to walk instead of run. He noticed it before she said anything. He always noticed small things. The way her shoulders tightened when she overthought. The way her eyes drifted when memories pulled her away. He never pointed these things out to make her uncomfortable. He simply adjusted himself to her rhythm, like someone learning a song by listening instead of reading notes. She had met him in the most ordinary way. No dramatic meeting, no instant spark that movies like to exaggerate. At first he was just someone who listened carefully and spoke gently. That alone had caught her attention. Most people waited for their turn to talk. He waited to understand. Over time, that difference became important to her, though she didn't admit it right away. That night, as the quiet stretched between them, she realized how rare it was to feel safe without being distracted. There was no rush, no expectation hanging in the air. She wasn't trying to impress him, and he wasn't trying to claim anything from her. They were simply there, sharing the same moment without trying to control it. Her past had taught her to be alert all the time. She had learned to read tones, watch expressions, and prepare herself for disappointment. Before, anticipation had always been tied to uncertainty. It came with the fear of being misunderstood or hurt. This time, anticipation felt calm. That scared her in a different way, because calm was unfamiliar. He leaned slightly closer, not invading her space, just enough to remind her she wasn't alone in her thoughts. His presence was steady, like a handrail on a long staircase. She didn't have to hold it, but knowing it was there made the climb easier. When he spoke, his voice was low and reassuring. He didn't ask questions that demanded answers. He simply said, "Breathe with me. We have all night." The words settled into her like warm air filling a cold room. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to follow someone else's pace. She took a slow breath, then another. Her trembling eased, not because it disappeared, but because she accepted it. She realized she didn't need to explain how she felt. She didn't need to justify why this moment mattered to her. He wasn't asking for explanations. He was offering patience. As she breathed, her thoughts wandered back to the girl she used to be, the one who believed she had to earn attention by being interesting, agreeable, or strong. That girl had learned to hide her uncertainty behind quick smiles and busy schedules. Sitting there now, she understood how tired that version of herself had been. He shifted slightly, giving her space when she needed it, and closeness when she didn't want to feel alone. There was no confusion in his actions. Everything he did felt deliberate but gentle, like he was careful not to disturb something fragile. That care made her chest tighten with emotion she hadn't named yet. She noticed how time slowed. Minutes felt longer, fuller. She wasn't counting them. She wasn't waiting for the next thing to happen. The moment itself was enough. That realization surprised her more than anything else. She had spent so much of her life chasing what came next that she had forgotten how powerful now could be. The room around them faded into the background. Small details stood out instead. The sound of steady breathing, the softness of the light, the calm way he remained present. These details grounded her. They reminded her that she was here, safe, and allowed to feel without being judged. Her anticipation wasn't about an outcome. It wasn't about expectations or promises. It was about possibility. The possibility that connection didn't have to be loud. The possibility that trust could grow quietly, without force. The possibility that she didn't have to protect herself every second. She shifted her position slightly, testing the comfort of staying instead of pulling away. Nothing changed between them except the understanding that she had chosen to remain. That choice mattered. It gave her a sense of control she hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't comment on it. He didn't praise her or react in a way that made it feel like a test. He simply stayed. His steadiness spoke louder than words. It told her that she didn't have to hurry, and she didn't have to retreat. As the night continued, she felt layers of tension slowly loosen. Not all at once, and not completely, but enough to notice the difference. She realized that anticipation didn't always have to be sharp or overwhelming. It could be soft and patient, like waiting for the sky to change color at dusk. Her breathing matched his now, slow and even. The tremble had turned into warmth, spreading quietly through her. She wasn't afraid of it. She welcomed it. It reminded her that she was alive, present, and capable of feeling deeply without losing herself. In that moment, she understood something important. True connection wasn't about intensity or speed. It was about respect, timing, and the freedom to choose. It was about someone who didn't rush her silence or demand her vulnerability before she was ready. The night didn't promise her answers. It didn't erase her past or guarantee her future, but it gave her something just as valuable, a glimpse of what it felt like to be fully present with another person, without fear guiding every step. As she sat there, calm and aware, she knew this moment would stay with her, not because of what happened, but because of how it made her feel. It reminded her that sometimes the most meaningful changes begin quietly, in a pause, with a single breath shared between two people who choose patience over pressure. When the first calm settled inside her, she expected it to fade quickly, the way peaceful moments often did in her life. Usually, silence broke, people changed, or reality rushed back in. But this time, the calm stayed. It followed her even as her thoughts began to move again. She noticed it the next morning when she woke up feeling rested, not just in body, but in mind. That surprised her more than anything else. She replayed the night in small pieces, not because she was searching for meaning, but because it had felt different from anything she had known before. There had been no pressure, no hidden expectations, just space. Space to breathe, to exist, to be herself without performing. She realized how rare that had been for her. As days passed, their connection continued in the same quiet way. They talked, but not constantly. Sometimes they sat together without filling every pause. At first, this made her nervous. She had been taught that silence meant disinterest or distance, but with him, silence felt full. It carried understanding instead of doubt. He never rushed conversations. When she spoke, he listened carefully, not interrupting, not trying to fix things right away. That patience slowly lowered her guard. She found herself sharing small thoughts she usually kept hidden, things she thought were too simple or unimportant. Instead of dismissing them, he treated them like they mattered. This was new territory for her. In the past, she had confused intensity with care. Fast words, strong emotions, and dramatic promises had once felt exciting, but they often ended in disappointment. With him, nothing felt rushed, and strangely, that made everything feel stronger. She began to notice how her body reacted around him. Her shoulders relaxed without effort. Her breath stayed steady. Her mind didn't race ahead, imagining problems that didn't exist yet. It was as if her nervous system finally believed it was safe to slow down. Trust didn't arrive all at once. It came in small moments. The way he respected her time, the way he remembered details she mentioned casually, the way he never made her feel guilty for needing space. Each moment added another layer, thin but strong, building something steady beneath her feet. Sometimes fear tried to return. Old habits don't disappear easily. There were moments when she expected him to change suddenly, to grow distant, or to ask for more than she was ready to give. During those moments, she watched closely, waiting for signs, but the signs never came. Instead, he stayed consistent, not perfect, but honest. When he didn't understand something, he asked. When he was unsure, he admitted it. That honesty mattered to her. It told her she didn't need to pretend to have everything figured out either. She started to realize how much energy she had spent in the past protecting herself, always alert, always ready to leave before being left. With him, she felt less need to prepare an exit. That didn't mean she lost her independence. It meant she felt safe enough to stay without fear. Their time together wasn't filled with big events. No dramatic scenes, no extreme highs or lows. Just shared routines, walking, talking, sitting, observing the world around them. Yet those simple moments carried weight. They built familiarity, and familiarity slowly became comfort. One evening, as they sat quietly again, she caught herself leaning into the moment instead of analyzing it. That was when she realized something had changed. She wasn't waiting for the connection to prove itself. She was experiencing it as it was. She remembered how she used to believe that meaningful connections had to be intense to be real, but now she saw that depth could be gentle. That understanding felt like a relief. It allowed her to be present without feeling overwhelmed. He noticed her changes, though he never pointed them out directly. He could see it in the way she smiled more easily, the way her eyes no longer searched for escape. He respected her pace, never pushing her to move faster than she was ready for. That respect made her reflect on her own boundaries. She began to understand them better, not as walls to keep people out, but as guidelines to protect her peace. She learned that she could say yes, slowly, thoughtfully, without guilt. There were moments when she wanted to pull back, simply out of habit. During those times, he didn't chase or pressure her. He allowed her space, trusting that she would return when ready. That trust strengthened her confidence in the connection. As weeks went by, she felt more grounded. Her emotions felt clearer. She wasn't swinging between extremes. She wasn't questioning herself constantly. Being around him reminded her that stability didn't have to be boring. It could be comforting. She also began to trust herself again. She trusted her feelings, her instincts, her ability to recognize safety. That was perhaps the biggest change of all. In the past, she often doubted her own judgment. Now she felt more certain, more aligned with herself. She realized that trust wasn't just about believing in another person. It was about believing that she could handle whatever came next. That understanding made anticipation feel lighter. It wasn't filled with anxiety anymore. It was simply curiosity about what could grow naturally. One night, as they talked quietly, she shared a piece of her past, not the painful details, but the lessons she had learned. He listened without judgment, without trying to compare or compete with her experiences. When she finished, he didn't rush to respond. He simply acknowledged her honesty. That moment stayed with her. It showed her that being open didn't mean losing control. It meant choosing when and how to share. That choice belonged to her. She began to understand that what they were building wasn't fragile. It didn't depend on constant reassurance or dramatic proof. It depended on consistency, respect, and time. Things she once overlooked but now valued deeply. As part 2 of her journey unfolded, she stood at a quiet turning point. She wasn't rushing forward, and she wasn't stuck in the past. She was learning to stay in the present, trusting the steady pace of something real. As time moved forward, the calm she had found began to reveal something deeper. Peace had created space, and in that space, old memories slowly surfaced. She had known this would happen sooner or later. When life finally slows down, the mind starts opening old rooms that were once locked tightly. She didn't panic this time. She reminded herself that growth often begins with facing what was once avoided. Some evenings, when she was alone, her thoughts drifted backward. She remembered moments from her past when she had ignored her own discomfort just to keep someone close. She remembered times when she stayed quiet even when her heart wanted to speak. Back then, she believed that love meant adjusting, bending, and sometimes disappearing a little. Those memories no longer hurt the same way, but they still carried weight. When she was with him, those thoughts didn't disappear, but they softened. His presence didn't erase her past, yet it gave her a new way to look at it. He never asked her to forget what she had been through. He didn't rush her healing or try to replace old pain with quick comfort. Instead, he allowed her to feel whatever came up, without fear of judgment. One quiet afternoon, she found herself unusually distant. Her words were fewer, her smile quieter. He noticed immediately. Instead of questioning her or assuming the worst, he simply asked if she wanted company or space. That simple question caught her off guard. No one had ever given her that choice so clearly before. She chose honesty, not complete openness, but a step toward it. She told him that some days felt heavier than others, even when nothing was wrong in the present. He expected him to misunderstand or feel pushed away. Instead, he nodded gently, as if he understood more than she had said. That moment made something inside her loosen. She realized she didn't need to protect him from her truth. She didn't need to pretend that healing was neat or fast. The relief she felt was quiet but powerful. Still, fear didn't disappear completely. There were nights when she wondered if she was asking for too much just by being herself. Old patterns tried to return, whispering that calm never lasts and that safety is temporary. Those thoughts were familiar, but now she recognized them as echoes of the past, not warnings of the future. One evening, as they sat together again, silence wrapped around them. This silence was different from before. It carried questions. She felt them rising inside her, asking whether she was ready to fully trust what was unfolding. Trusting meant risk. It meant allowing herself to be seen not just as calm and steady, but also as uncertain and human. She didn't say anything right away. She took a slow breath, grounding herself in the moment. He didn't interrupt her thoughts. He stayed present, patient as always. That patience gave her courage. She spoke carefully, choosing her words with honesty but simplicity. She shared that sometimes she struggled to believe that something good could remain good. She admitted that her past had taught her to expect sudden changes. Saying it out loud made her voice tremble slightly, but she didn't stop. When she finished, she waited. In the past, moments like this had often led to distance or discomfort. This time was different. He didn't rush to reassure her with promises. He didn't tell her everything would be perfect. He simply acknowledged her feelings and reminded her that they were building something slowly, together. That response mattered deeply. It showed her that trust wasn't about guarantees. It was about shared understanding and mutual respect. She didn't need certainty about the future to feel safe in the present. Over the next days, she noticed changes within herself. She became more aware of her emotional reactions. When fear appeared, she paused instead of reacting immediately. She asked herself where the fear came from and whether it belonged to the present moment. Often it didn't. She also noticed how he responded during moments of uncertainty. He remained consistent. Not distant, not overly reassuring, just steady. That steadiness became an anchor for her. It reminded her that stability could exist without control. There were moments when she tested the connection without realizing it. Small hesitations, brief withdrawals. Not because she wanted to leave, but because she wanted to see if he would disappear. Each time he respected her space while remaining available. That balance slowly rebuilt her sense of emotional safety. She began to understand that confronting old fears didn't mean reliving pain. It meant recognizing how far she had come. She was no longer the person who stayed silent out of fear. She was learning to speak calmly, honestly, and without apology. One evening she reflected on how anticipation had changed for her. Before, it was filled with anxiety and imagined outcomes. Now, anticipation felt grounded. It wasn't about what might happen, it was about staying open to what was already happening. She realized that growth often feels uncomfortable before it feels freeing. Facing her fears didn't weaken her, it strengthened her awareness. It allowed her to choose connection consciously instead of out of habit. As part 3 of her journey unfolded, she stood at another quiet turning point. Not dramatic, not loud, but deeply meaningful. She wasn't rushing towards certainty, and she wasn't trapped by doubt. She was learning to hold both hope and caution without letting either control her. For the first time, she understood that trust didn't require the absence of fear. It required the willingness to move forward gently, even when fear existed, and that realization stayed with her, steady and reassuring. Like a quiet promise she made to herself, to keep choosing presence over panic and honesty over retreat. With time, she began to notice a quiet shift inside herself. It didn't happen suddenly, and there was no clear moment she could point to and say, "This is where everything changed." Instead, it felt like standing in sunlight after a long winter and slowly realizing that the cold no longer reached her bones. Something within her had settled. She was no longer watching every moment closely, waiting for it to break. She was participating. That difference mattered. Before, she had always stood slightly apart from her own life, protecting herself by not stepping too deeply into anything that mattered. Now, she was learning how to stay. This didn't mean she had stopped being careful. She still noticed her emotions. She still respected her limits, but she no longer treated caution like a shield she had to hold up at all times. Instead, she treated it like a guide, something that helped her move thoughtfully rather than fearfully. He noticed the change, too. She spoke more freely now, not just about safe topics, but about small opinions and honest reactions. She laughed more easily. Her silence when it came was no longer tense. It was comfortable. He didn't comment on these changes, but he adjusted naturally, meeting her where she was. One evening they talked about choices, how people often confuse being patient with being passive. She shared how in the past she believed waiting meant giving up control. Now she understood that choosing her pace was an act of strength. Saying yes slowly was still a yes. Saying no gently was still a no. That conversation stayed with her. It helped her see herself more clearly. She realized that she wasn't avoiding closeness anymore. She was choosing it carefully. That difference gave her confidence. There came a moment when she understood she was no longer reacting to her past. She was responding to her present. Old memories still existed, but they no longer decided her actions. She could acknowledge them without letting them guide her steps. This realization showed up in simple ways. She stopped overthinking messages. She stopped replaying conversations in her head. When something bothered her, she spoke about it calmly instead of letting it grow into doubt. Each small choice added to her sense of control. He met these moments with the same steady presence she had come to trust. When she spoke, he listened. When she hesitated, he waited. When she needed reassurance, he offered it without making her feel dependent on it. That balance helped her grow stronger within herself. One day, she caught herself making a decision without fear guiding it. It was a small decision, almost unnoticeable, but it felt powerful. I would be so happy, She realized she had acted based on how she felt in the moment, not on what she feared might happen later. That was new. She understood then that the turning point wasn't about him changing her life. It was about her changing how she showed up in her own life. His role was not to lead or rescue her, but to walk beside her while she learned to trust herself again. There were still quiet challenges. Some days, doubt returned without warning. On those days, she didn't judge herself for feeling uncertain. She reminded herself that healing was not a straight line. Instead of pulling away, she stayed honest. She allowed herself to feel without rushing to fix everything. He respected that honesty. He didn't try to solve her feelings. He didn't minimize them. He simply accepted them as part of who she was in that moment. That acceptance made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced before. As time passed, she began to understand the true meaning of choice. Choice wasn't about dramatic decisions. It was about daily actions. Choosing to stay present. Choosing to communicate. Choosing not to assume the worst. Choosing not to rush the future. She realized that real connection didn't come from intensity or constant excitement. It came from consistency. From knowing that someone would respond tomorrow the same way they responded today, with respect and honesty. This understanding softened her expectations. She wasn't demanding perfection from herself or from him. She allowed space for mistakes, knowing that growth often comes through learning, not avoiding error. One quiet night, she reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the version of herself who believed she had to earn patience by being easy or silent. That version felt distant now. She no longer believed that her needs were a burden. She understood that her voice mattered, even when it was unsure, that her feelings deserved space, even when they were complicated. This understanding didn't make her louder, it made her calmer. She was no longer waiting for reassurance to feel secure. She carried that security within herself. Being with him felt like an addition to her life, not the foundation of her stability. That distinction gave her freedom. She could enjoy the connection without fear of losing herself in it. She could care deeply without feeling consumed. He sensed this independence and respected it. He didn't cling. He didn't withdraw. He remained present in a way that supported her strength rather than replacing it. As part 4 of her journey unfolded, she realized that the most important change was internal. She had learned to trust her ability to choose wisely. She had learned that patience was not waiting in fear but moving forward with awareness. She no longer felt rushed by time or pressured by expectations. She allowed moments to unfold naturally. She allowed herself to grow without comparison. In this phase of her life, she wasn't searching for certainty. She was building confidence. Confidence in her judgment, confidence in her boundaries, confidence in her capacity to connect without losing herself, and that confidence felt steady, quiet, and deeply real, like a strong foundation built slowly, one thoughtful choice at a time. Time moved forward quietly, the way it does when life finally feels steady. There were no sharp turns or dramatic moments that announced the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Instead, everything blended naturally, like colors slowly changing in the sky. She didn't notice the change right away, but she felt it. A sense of completion began to settle inside her, calm and reassuring. She realized that she was no longer measuring moments by how much they meant or where they might lead. She was simply living them. That alone felt like a victory. In the past, she had always searched for signs of danger, signs of loss, signs that something was about to go wrong. Now she allowed moments to exist without testing them. Her connection with him continued, steady and respectful. Nothing felt forced. They shared time, thoughts, and quiet understanding, but they also lived their own separate lives. She valued that balance more than she could explain. It showed her that closeness didn't mean losing space. It meant choosing to meet again and again without pressure. One evening, as she walked alone, she reflected on how much she had changed, not in ways that others might notice easily, but in ways that mattered deeply to her. She trusted her instincts now. She listened to her emotions instead of pushing them aside. When something felt right, she allowed herself to accept it. When something felt off, she didn't ignore it out of fear of being alone. She remembered how anticipation once made her uneasy. It used to come with racing thoughts and restless energy. Now, anticipation felt calm. It wasn't about waiting for something big to happen. It was about being open to whatever the moment offered. That shift changed how she experienced life. She understood now that true growth doesn't always come from big decisions. It comes from small, repeated choices. Choosing honesty over silence. Choosing patience over panic. Choosing presence over distraction. These choices had slowly reshaped her inner world. There were days when doubts still appeared, but they no longer controlled her. She acknowledged them and let them pass, like clouds moving across the sky. She didn't fight them or judge herself for feeling uncertain. She trusted that clarity would return, as it always did. He remained a part of her life, not as someone who defined her happiness, but as someone who shared it. That distinction mattered. She didn't depend on him to feel whole. She felt whole already. Their connection added warmth, not stability. Stability came from within her. One quiet conversation stayed with her. They talked about the future not in terms of promises, but in terms of values, what mattered to them, what kind of life they wanted to build individually. There was no pressure to align everything perfectly, just respect for each other's paths. That conversation made her smile later when she was alone. It reminded her how far she had come. Once, she would have feared such discussions, worrying about expectations or endings. Now, she saw them as simple exchanges of truth. She also noticed how her relationships with others changed. She spoke more clearly. She set boundaries without guilt. She didn't overextend herself just to please people. That confidence carried into every part of her life, quietly improving things she hadn't even realized needed change. There was a morning when she woke up feeling grateful, without needing a reason, no big achievement, no special event, just gratitude for peace. That feeling stayed with her throughout the day, soft and steady. She realized then that her journey wasn't about finding the perfect connection. It was about becoming someone who could experience connection without fear. Someone who could stay present even when outcomes were uncertain. Someone who trusted herself enough to take things as they came. The night that started everything still lived in her memory, but it no longer felt distant or mysterious. It felt like a beginning she now understood, not because of what happened, but because of what it taught her. She had learned that calm could be powerful, that patience could be intentional, that safety could exist without control. These lessons shaped how she moved through the world now. As time continued, she didn't rush to define anything. She allowed life to unfold naturally. She knew now that meaning grows best when it isn't forced. She also understood that her story didn't end here. It wasn't meant to. This was simply a chapter where she learned to breathe fully, to trust deeply, and to stay present. Whatever came next, she felt ready to meet it with the same awareness she had cultivated. She no longer trembled at anticipation. She welcomed it as a gentle reminder that she was open, aware, and alive. She no longer feared silence. She found comfort in it. She no longer rushed connection. She respected its pace. In the end, what stayed with her most was not a person or a moment, but a feeling, a steady sense of self that didn't disappear when circumstances changed. That feeling became her anchor, and as she moved forward, she carried it with her, quietly confident, grounded, and open to life, knowing that whatever came next, she had already learned the most important lesson of all, how to be present, without fear and without losing herself.